folks. Welcome to episode 4 of The Breakdown. I'm Sir Scoots. I'm back from vacation. And boy, what a vacation it was. We'll get into that in a few minutes. A couple housekeeping notes, as we always do to start the show. Just remember, we are here live every Wednesday, generally. Again, took last week off. Won't happen very often. And we do a Q&A at the end of every show. So if you've got any questions for me, could be topics I talk about this week, could be just topics on your mind about gaming, esports, pop culture, whatever. You just want to use DN Peak in Twitch chat, and Tyler's going to grab that, and then Jason's going to ask me a bunch of questions at the end of the show. Also, another world premiere is coming your way at the end of this show. Just like we debuted Thorin's top 5 players of 2019 for Global Offensive, we got another one coming from Thorin. We collabed with Thorin, and his idea this time was top 5 North American Counter-Strike Global Offensive players of all time. It's a spicy list. You're going to want to stay to the end of the show to hear his take on it, and then it'll end up on YouTube as well. Feel free to leave comments on YouTube who you thought your top 5 are. You know, getting a nice little argument with Thorin about his versus yours. He always comes correct in the sense of his reasoning for his choices. So I think the video turned out really good. Him and Anthony on our side and Thorin on his side, turned out really, really good. But that'll be at the end of the show, and then it'll be up on YouTube for all time's sake. So shout out to Thorin, as always, for wanting to collab with us. And we've got another one lined up. We won't tell you about that one yet, but good stuff. That'll be at the very end of the show. But now, actually, let's get into really what this most important show is all about. It's about my vacation, right? I just got back from Disney World. Very, very exciting stuff. You know, if you've never been into the Disney parks, they do an amazing job. Customer service, all those good stuff. Really, really fun vacation. I hadn't been to any of their theme parks in a very long time. When I was in event logistics, I used to go to Orlando probably twice a year for corporate groups, and then we might take part in an evening in a park or something, but really never got to be a tourist in any of the parks, right? It was like you jam in for a couple hours, try to get some rides in, and go back to work. So this was just a pure vacation. My nephew turned 5. So his family took him down there to kind of his first experience at the Disney's parks. He's big into Star Wars, so it was really, really cool. Uncle Scoots got to go down and hang out with them, and Milo is my nephew, really low-key kid, not a big whiner, no meltdowns to his parents, like really, really well-behaved kid, so it made uncle duty even easier. But as you can see, we've got some stuff going on right here. We started with Animal Kingdom. And this whole show is going to be literally just me walking you through my vacation photos. Hope you don't mind. Animal Kingdom is one of the parks. It's kind of a zoo/amusement ride park. There's a picture of me all stretched out at Epcot. My photos aren't that great. But Epcot, really, really cool place. A lot of renovations happening at Epcot. They're building the Guardian of the Galaxy.
We only care about Star Wars.
He only cares about. That's typical. So Epcot's cool. It's very much under construction right now. Guardians of the Galaxy, as well as. So this is what he wants to see. So let me get properly attired for Star Wars. Hang on. It's a very prop-heavy show this week. So this is the Rise of the Resistance ride. I won't spoil the rides. People basically say it's the coolest ride at Disney. They're not lying at this point. It is a really cool ride here. So let me get in proper attire for you all. If there's any question as to what side of the Force I play on, I think it's pretty obvious. I live on the dark side. It is the only side. It is the dark side. So here we are, Rise of the Resistance, really, really cool. Galaxy's Edge is kind of the theme park area within Hollywood Studios Park that is all things Star Wars. So they've done a really, really good job of decorating the entire area with Star Wars stuff. You know, the different ships, X-Wings, Kylo Ren's ship, big Millennium Falcon is in the area. There's Kylo's ship. So really, really, again, like all things Disney, really well done. I built a lightsaber. You have a lightsaber experience. This is really heavy metal, actually. There I am in my lightsaber, dark side shot. But really, really cool. You go to Savi's, you build a lightsaber, you pick kind of a series of different hilts you can pick, you know, more Jedi hilts, or power and control is this hilt set, which is the dark side, basically. And then within that, you can mix and match stuff. But this is really solidly built. Heavy, you can have little fights with it. You can bang on it. I'll bang on my desk a little bit. But really, really cool. Makes a lot of sounds. You all can hear that, right? and my nephew built one. Milo, though a little confused as a young man, he went with the power and control hilt set, so he's got kind of a silk hilt, but he picked a freaking blue kyber crystal to light up his saber blue. So it's like, dude, are you a Jedi? Are you a Sith? So the whole trip I was trying to talk him into being a Sith, but I got some work to do on that. But it was a really, really cool trip. Again, I think Disney does a really, really good job with taking care of everyone's needs. It's a money printing machine. It's not a cheap vacation, right? Parks are expensive, food's expensive, hotels are expensive. But if you stay on property, you get access to their Fast Pass system earlier, which lets you get on rides that are very busy. Rise of the Resistance is very different right now. You actually have to queue in at 7 in the morning in the park with an app, and then it's a random luck of the draw if you get a boarding pass to ride the ride that day. So there's people that travel thousands of miles, and they hit that button, and their boarding pass either is in a standby group and they can't get on that day, or there's technical issues with the ride and their boarding pass gets pushed and they don't get to ride it. We got lucky. We got number 66, which was my birthday month, actually, 1966, birthday year. So we got on right after lunch. So it was great. They give you a nice window. The app tells you, okay, your boarding group is boarding. You've got X amount of time to get there and do your ride. So that worked out really well. Millennium Falcon, badass ride as well. I think Rise is better in a lot of ways, but it's not interactive. Millennium Falcon's an interactive ride. You can be a pilot, you can be an engineer, you can be a gunner on the ship, and you and your crew have to pilot the ship through a bunch of chaos. Very fun. I was able to do every spot on that ride because they have a single line, which works out great if you're a skier. You know what a single line is. They try to pair you onto people with chairlifts. So the single ride puts you as like that 6th spot in the Falcon, right? So I was able to do that really quick. The line for the singles was like 15 minutes. So that was really cool. The vacation was great. Batteries recharged. Super awesome. Glad to be back, though. We will generally always try to have a guest host as we ramp up our staffing. Even if I have to go somewhere or do something, we will always try to have someone else host the show. It just didn't work out. We had one lined up, but it kind of fell through last minute, so we just canceled it. We worked on the set. As you can see in the warehouse, we now have a big TV screen, kind of projector that we can use for all sorts of stuff. So we'll start using this for other content, other videos, other big screen stuff we want to show instead of just using the TVs behind me and in front of me. And eventually, we're also working on an interview system. So we can do some live interviews or even pre-record interviews, but we would probably use the big screen for that so I can kind of talk to the big screen. A little better format than just the TV over my shoulder here. But let's get into it. Again, nice vacation. Jason and the gang held down the fort while I was gone, worked on a lot of stuff, but glad to be back. So it's kind of like 2 weeks of news in some regards when it comes to the breakdown, because obviously it's a weekly show. So I kind of earmarked things as I was gone that I still want to talk about that might be kind of old news in our world because things move really fast. But let's talk about this quick little one. This dropped into our news. Atari-themed hotels are coming to us, right? And what really jumped out at us, for one, Atari's kind of an old and dead brand, so it's kind of funny that, like, do we care about an Atari hotel? I mean, I grew up on Ataris, literally. So I think it's kind of neat, but as a company now, I don't know if there's any sort of cachet. And it got me thinking because Disney, speaking of Star Wars, they're building a galactic starship hotel in Orlando. And the idea is you can only stay there 2 nights in a row, and it's kind of a role play experience. You check in, and the idea, it is a hotel, but the idea is that it's really a ship. So you end up on the ship, you get a uniform, and like everyone's role playing around you. There's Jedi and Sith, like lightsaber training and stuff. So it seems pretty neat. So this is kind of another version of that. The idea is they're going to gamify the hotel experience, and it'll be very retro and nostalgic to old Atari stuff. The first hotel is supposedly being built in downtown Phoenix. That's kind of why we grabbed it. And I think Chicago, Austin, Seattle, Vegas, I think 8 are planned. Again, I don't know if the new generation gives a shit about Atari. I think it's kind of neat. And then one of the things they're also talking about is that some of these hotels will also be built with esports competition spaces, arenas, if you will, right? So again, us being in Scottsdale, Phoenix, we're like, whoa, is this hotel going to have that kind of cool shit? Because we'd love to maybe get involved in that and play with them and see what that's all about. I don't know which hotels will have the esports stuff, but kind of neat. We're going to keep an eye on it, obviously. Maybe we'll take a camera down there eventually when they start building it and do some walkthroughs or whatever. See how neat it is, see if it's worthwhile. But just jumped out as some quick news I wanted to chat about. And again, it seems like, everyone is kind of gamifying their businesses, right? Gamifying hotels, gamifying team building exercises for corporate America. So it's kind of neat. Again, we'll just keep an eye on it for you and let you know how it progresses here in Phoenix. It would be cool if they do build an esports arena. Maybe they need some experts to help them how to build that arena and what kind of production gear to have in there. So we'll see. And by the way, I think we might be on the front page of Twitch. I'm not quite sure that was going to maybe start this week or next week. So if you did come via the front page, thank you very much. I have confirmation that we are on the front page today. So thank you to Twitch for putting us on the front page. They are one of our sponsors. You can see them in the window behind me and right here in front of me. So if you came, hopefully our job is now to get you to stick and to follow us, subscribe to us, all that good stuff. But welcome if you came from the front page. This is a weekly show about me ranting about all things gaming, esports, and whatever else is on my mind. So let's get into our next topic of the day. Let's talk about this coronavirus a little bit, right? Obviously, it's a big deal in the world. It is a big issue just global health-wise. Being compared to SARS and Ebola and bird flu and all these different things. And it's obviously generating out of China, but it's not really contained there anymore. People are getting on airplanes and traveling around. We wanted to have a little fun with the name. Like if you're Corona, the beer company, you're literally hating this goddamn name right now. But we thought it was kind of cute, poke a little fun at Outbreak. That's from the movie Outbreak, if you're not familiar. Excuse me. Oh my God, I've got the coronavirus. No, I don't. But the reason we bring it up is it has now affected esports. We've got Overwatch League has Chinese teams. These Chinese teams were set up to have homestands as part of the homestand system. We'll talk about Overwatch starting later in the broadcast. It starts next week, or I should say this weekend. So they've had to shift, right? It makes no sense for players to go into China to possibly get sick. Fans, etc. So they're postponing the homestands currently for Overwatch League. And a lot of the Chinese-based Overwatch teams are moving their base of operations out of China right now, Korea, etc., so they can keep practicing, they can prepare for the other homestands they have to go to. So again, this worldwide problem is affecting esports. Not only has Overwatch postponed, but League of Legends Asia League, the LPL, has also postponed week 2 and possibly more weeks to come, depending on how this all gets quarantined and all gets figured out over there. I've read different things on the news that it's not as big as people are making it out to be. It's just like the flu. It's not as bad. Then you got other people saying, no, it's worse. If you get this, it's bad for you. We need to contain it. So, I don't know where the reality of that lies, but obviously it's something that anyone in esports you want to be concerned about. And if you can err on the side of postponing your stuff and changing your stuff while it all gets figured out in China, the better, right? This will obviously impact viewership numbers of those events. Homestands have to be rescheduled. LPL has to be postponed. Nobody who's running these leagues wants that, especially, Overwatch is starting up the homestand system for the first time in that sense, and especially in China. So they obviously don't want to postpone this shit. But I think it's the right call. I think you really have to err on the side of caution on something like this. And outside of the two big leagues, WESG's Asia Pacific qualifiers for their series of events, which is multiple games, has also been postponed and moved. It was going to be in Macau. That's now being moved somewhere else and being postponed. Because again, better to err on the safety side of it for everybody.
We're all going to die, and it's over.
Yeah. It's The Stand, Jason. If you've read the Stephen King book, The Stand, is just happening now. So we'll be in the bunker here at Do Not Peek. We've got a room for a few of you. We want to worry about procreating and saving life first, though, so just keep that in mind if you apply for a spot. But yeah, it's unfortunate, that anything like this has to be postponed. Fans have bought tickets already, all those kind of things. But again, better to be safe than sorry. Now, next on the news, we're going to move into a little bit of more league news. as it affects CDL and Overwatch, but this was a big one. So right before CDL first, I won't call it a homestand, it was like a big tournament for all of them, which was right when I was leaving town, we finally found out who was going to be the broadcast partner for these leagues, right? 2 years ago, it was announced Twitch, $90 million, $45 million a year for 2 years. Well, that deal is over. And the new deal is YouTube, right? So YouTube came in. We don't know how much they paid. That wasn't announced in any of their press releases, so it makes me at least believe it's not bigger than 90 million, because if it was a big marketing kind of number, you would trumpet that. You would talk about that, right? Bigger than Twitch, $100 million. So the deal covers the two big leagues, as well as other esports properties, Hearthstone, etc., will now be streamed on YouTube Live instead of Twitch. And then I think another big part is Google Cloud for some of Activision Blizzard's games that need servers is going to become the backbone of those servers now instead of the AWS, the Amazon system, right? So you've got a battle happening on two fronts here, right? Not only exclusive broadcast partner for the live streams, but now you've got Google going, and we will take some of your server business, Amazon as well, right? So you've probably got a world where YouTube is paying Activision Blizzard for rights, but then Activision Blizzard is paying Google for server space, right? It's kind of a combo deal. And again, we don't know the numbers, but it's obviously a pretty big deal, right? Now, where these conversations always lead to is what's that going to do to viewership, right? We especially Counter-Strike, we've been on other platforms, right? We've done this dance before where Twitch had the activation rights. They decided they didn't want to bid. We had ECS go to YouTube for a while. We had ESL go to YouTube and Facebook Live for a while, like all taking better deals in the short term to see if you can grow a viewer base, right? Worked out okay on YouTube, worked out terribly on Facebook Live, right? So now we're seeing this again, different leagues. And I think the big challenge is, I think when it comes to Call of Duty, it's a natural, right? Call of Duty as a fan base, Call of Duty as a competitive set of fans that care about the optics and the hex of the world and that kind of world, they're already really deep on YouTube content, right? I mean, Optic came out of YouTube, right? These big console teams came out of YouTube in some regards, in the sense of where their fan base lives. The content they create is very YouTube-centric. You know, you look at the Nade Shots and all those guys and what they're doing, and he's not in this league, but same kind of thing. So I think getting a Call of Duty guy to watch YouTube Live, not really a big deal for them, right? It's like, oh yeah, no big deal. I'm already over there watching all this other stuff. So I think for Call of Duty, probably not a big deal. They peaked over, I think, a little over 100 grand in the Minnesota weekend. And that's when Huntsman was playing Optic, which was, so that's old Optic playing current Optic. So I think they'll skip less of a beat, and their viewership will not necessarily be negatively impacted by the switch. But where I think it's going to be interesting is for Overwatch, right? So Overwatch very much on Twitch the last couple years. Overwatch streamers on Twitch. So both sides of that ecosystem, you know, whether you just want to watch Overwatch streamers or you want to watch OWL, you're used to all things Twitch right now. The drops, the game commander experience, where, you know, all the POVs are available to you. And so I just don't know how it's going to necessarily work out for this Overwatch split, right? And we're going to find out because, again, they have a homestand coming up, their very first homestand. Before we talk about that, though, I do want to go back a little bit and talk about the Call of Duty one that already happened, right? So Minnesota hosted the first CDL event, and it was all teams on deck, not really a tournament, more of a series of kind of exhibition matches. They all played each other a couple times. I think it turned out really, really good. I think it started really, really rough, which often happens on anyone's day one. But this is a day one of a tournament organizer that doesn't necessarily do a lot of tournaments yet. You know, this was Minnesota running their homestand. So I think some of the things, you know, they learned really quickly. I think they started with the Overwatch School of Observing. Let's do everything in third person, and quickly realized you just can't. Like, you can't do that for Call of Duty. So from day 1 to day 2, the observing got much better. They have this issue where they have to rebuild their in-game interface every new game, right? And they call it Codcaster, right? Like GoTV to us is called Codcaster to them. And so they were tweaking that constantly. Like, no, we need to add these stats. We need the mini-map. We need all these kind of things at all times. And so it was a work in progress that weekend, right? I think it got much better towards the end, no doubt about it. I think the desk was fine, and Maven and crew, and Lottie on the desk. Like, I think their talent pool is great, whether it's the desk talent or the casting talent. So that wasn't a problem. They had good shoulder content. They had good intros. Like, they did a lot of really good things right off the bat well. But again, they just had some day 1 issues on how to observe this game and how to, properly HUD it for the hardcore rabid Call of Duty audience, And again, I think it got better. And they also will roll into London this weekend. 8 teams go to London this time, and it'll probably be better again, right? You keep tweaking, you keep kind of fixing things that you realize that you didn't get right on that first week. Now, the other thing they do at these Call of Duty events, which I think is really, really cool, is they have a whole series of Challenger events, right? Challenger is their path to pro system, if you will, right? It's how you find the tier 2, tier 3 teams and players so they get some eyeballs on them so they can maybe then get moved up to the big leagues. A lot of negative press came out of this one because it was literally in a parking garage. You can see we've got video here rolling of an actual participant who was down there. It was in a garage. Supposedly it was heated. They did have internet issues getting all those systems up and running. There wasn't a lot of stream exposure for these players, and that was kind of a lot of back and forth going, well, if we play in this, but we don't get exposed, how does that help us in our new team, right? You also have a chance to win $250,000 at one of these stops. So there's a whole lot of things that you're going there for. Yeah, you obviously want to get some stream time. You want to get exposure. This system used to actually feed into the main Call of Duty League, right? You could win out of the open bracket, so to speak, and then get a shot at playing the big boys. That's been cut off. You kind of have your own system to play in. But again, they have a system that happens at these events. I know Esports Engine has now announced that they're going to be involved in some of these Challenger events to kind of, and again, if you don't know what Esports Engine is, it's Adam Apicella, it's all the ex-MLG guys. They've opened their own event logistics business, right? So the same thing they used to do for MLG, they're now doing for whoever hires them. So I think you're going to see, and they're doing a lot of the Challenger stuff for teams at these different stops. So I think you're going to see that product instantly get better. Probably less delays with internet, all those kind of issues, because the Esports Engine kind of knows what the fuck they're doing, right? So as long as the teams that hire them listen to them, I think even that product, the Challenger side, will get much better, much tighter, much more what a Call of Duty fan is used to watching last year with MLG when it kind of comes to the open bracket stuff, right? And again, that all happens this weekend. They end up in London. 8 teams will go to London. I think the teams are traveling right now. London's a crazy, crazy city right now for esports, right? You've got some Counter-Strike we'll talk about is happening there. You've got Call of Duty happening there. So, again, it'll be interesting to tune in this week, see what they've fixed, see what they've adjusted. And now they get into kind of their homestand tournament model for Call of Duty. They got the first big one out of the way. And then... so we'll see how they roll forward. Again, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the game, but much like a lot of esports, I tend to watch for the production value, how their desk runs, what's their shoulder content like, how do they get in and out of breaks, more of the nerdy production side of it than actually like knowing enough about the game and having nuance of watching it. I think Call of Duty is, in some regards, like Search and Destroy is much like our Counter-Strike, so that's kind of fun to watch. It's my favorite mode that they play, at least. So let's move on with more Activision Blizzard news, but now on the Overwatch front. Before we get into their opening weekend, there's been this thing with just Overwatch the game that the developers just keep kind of waffling a little bit. The game launches, and it's decreed that we will never ban any hero. You can play 5, 6 Torbjorns if you want. And people did, right? There was no hero locking at all, right? You could have 5 tracers, you could have 6 tracers, you could whatever that team wanted to do. Activision Blizzard quickly realized, okay, wait a minute, 5 Torborns is a bad idea. So then they instituted, kind of starting to lock down only 1 character per team. So you can't have 2 Mays, you can't have 2 anything, right, on a team. And they're constantly evolving this, right? But it started with, nope, not anyone can do anything they want. Well, now they can, right? And that keeps tweaking, right? And then it gets into this conversation about bans, right? Before I went on vacation, there was a whole lot of talk about players and teams having a ban system like you would see in the MOBAs, right? Like League has, like Dota has, right? Where as part of the pregame process, just like in Counter-Strike, we veto and pick maps that we play for that best of 3. This idea, again, if you're familiar at all with Dota and League, is that heroes are banned, right? You get a ban, I pick. I ban, you get a pick. And, everyone does that a little differently. But the idea is that no hero is safe, no champion is safe. And that adds a whole awesome level of strategy when it comes to those games, right? Now, most pro players of those games have a bunch of heroes and champions in their pocket, right? So if this one gets banned, okay, we're shifting to this, right? So it's not necessarily the end of the world. So there was a lot of talk about Overwatch should do something like this, right? And that as part of that pregame, the players and the teams have a ban and a pick process. Well, Jeff from Overwatch came out a couple weeks ago and said, yeah, we hear you. We've been talking about it a lot. We don't think it solves the problems you think it'll solve. We don't think it helps, because a lot of the issues are if you have some sort of system in place where there's an active ban and pick, then you might be tweaking the meta every week, right? By virtue of that existing, you can break a meta if you start banning the meta heroes, right? But again, Jeff came out, long post, said, hey, we're looking at it, but right now, not going with anything. We're going to fix the meta by being better with our adjustments to the heroes and dropping more heroes on a more regular basis. We will keep the game fresher as a game, and therefore a lot of these problems maybe go away, right? And I was like, oh, okay, they've decided. Fuck it, no one's banning anything. But then, while I'm on vacation, they come out and say, okay, wait, we spoke too soon. You're all not going to ban anybody. We're going to ban people. And they basically came out and said, as you can see, they're going to ban, as in the developers of Overwatch, for Overwatch League, are going to ban 4 characters a week. 1 support, 1 tank, 2 DPS. And they will decide this, and the teams will have about a week to prepare to play for that ban. And there's some caveats. They won't ban heroes 2 weeks in a row. They're only going to ban heroes that are actively used. So they're going to keep an eye during the season and come up with a system of, okay, these are the most popular. This is how they're getting banned, right? Now, we reached out to all our contacts. We were trying to figure out, well, how are they going to do this? Is it a random system? Is it a wheel? And we might get some Overwatch staff in trouble if they get figured out that they were the ones that leaked, but we actually have the system. We're gonna show you the system. This is how they're gonna ban tanks. There you go. So for the first week of Overwatch, Zarya's banned. And they have one of these wheels for every category, right? So they'll do it twice for DPS, once for support. I sure hope that guy doesn't get in trouble for leaking that to us. But there you go, right? I guess it's better than a dartboard. I wanted a big wheel. You spin a big wheel, right? And you do like a lottery every week. You broadcast it. You get State Farm to buy. You get someone to pay for it. Welcome to the State Farm ban, pick, whatever, But kind of funny. So then, we've got some feedback from the players. A lot of the players and a lot of people actively involved in Overwatch League seem to think it's a great idea. Probably were prepped a little bit about it. But then you've got this. I don't know if we can pause this one, but this is great. They put their balls on the table and stabbed it with a knife, trying to avoid the major veins. I don't think Dogman's a fan of the system, but that's a pretty ballsy tweet, my friend. He laid his balls on the table with that tweet. And again, I just don't know. And when we talk about the Counter-Strike stuff later, because there were some map changes, my thought process on these kind of stuff is, what are you trying to fix, and how are you fixing it? And does your implementation fix it? And I don't know if handicapping in this regard is really going to give us the best Overwatch, right? And again, you've got people that are actively involved going, yeah, this will be interesting, going to be tough on player. And again, like, we're not talking about it because I'm used to esports that travel for a living, but the fans of Overwatch League are already like, look at the travel schedule. These guys are going to be jet lagged. These guys will have no time to practice. They'll have no time to sleep. They'll have no time to eat. Well, now they have no time to actually properly prepare for something that's going to change every goddamn week on them, right? And I know that when they recruit these pros, they're also not necessarily recruiting one-trick pros, like they want pros that can play several DPS, several support, etc. But you start killing someone's main on a regular basis, that absolutely is going to affect that team's performance, whether you think it will or not. And again, as I tweeted, Dev RNG is the best RNG, because that's what they've done. They have added a developer weekly RNG system. I guess we're going to see how it works, you know? And again, when you compare it to MOBAs, there's hundreds of heroes and champions in Dota and in League of Legends, right? So wanting that kind of esport pick and ban system is maybe too soon for Overwatch anyway. There's not enough variety of characters to pick and ban yet, right? Now, maybe once Overwatch has 50, heroes that are running around, and that's one of the things that Zoe said, who's hosting their desk this year, is that's the way to go, because you add a level of strategy. It gives you something to talk about every match that's slightly different, but too soon now for that game because there's just not enough variety of bannable, pickable characters in Overwatch. So maybe, but they need to release a hell of a lot more heroes for us to get even close to that system, right? So it'll be very interesting to watch. It doesn't start till March, so we won't see this in play yet, but it's just very, very interesting that they've decided to do this, right? And again, it's an experiment. We'll see how it turns out. I applaud them for trying something. I don't know how the pros are going to adapt to it or like it, or even the fans, right? So it'll be very interesting. So yeah, jury's out on that one. Continuing with Overwatch, though, they are now heading into their opening weekend. Now we get to see their first homestands. And I think these will be really well attended. I think they'll sell out. I think they'll have good viewership numbers because, again, we haven't had any Overwatch for quite a while, right? So the Overwatch fan base is chomping at the bit to get this going again. Again, I think the move to YouTube is going to hurt them a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see how they recover from that, how they market. I think YouTube Live is obviously going to be an amazing, platform within YouTube. YouTube has a shitload of users, right, that use that platform. The issue is discoverability, right? They have to figure out how to get the eyeballs there quickly and easily. We're all used to Twitch. We all know how it works. So it's training that fan base on how to find these games really quick, right? And how you tap into the fan base of YouTube that doesn't know about it yet, right? That is the cachet, right? All these millions of people are there. As you saw, they announced $15 billion they made for them last year, and they made $5 billion in the first 3 months of this year. YouTube has made for Google. So the platform is a beast, right? But it's getting that live component more up and running. So let's talk about the opening weekend, because they're doing it a little different, right? They have 5 teams that are going to 2 locations, right? Dallas and New York City, right? Dallas-Fort Worth and New York City are each going to be hosting on Saturday and Sunday matches, right? And the way they're doing this is they're doing the New York matches first and the Dallas matches second, right? So kind of AM, PM. So as a fan, that's awesome, right? All day long I got matches, right? Started in New York, 2 matches, then Dallas in 2 matches. And then tying this all together is going to be a broadcast analyst desk that is being remoted out of LA, which also makes sense, right? So they'll kind of be our anchor for the weekend, right? Oh my God. It's okay. I can talk about Overwatch. It's okay. My lightsaber is chiming in. I don't know if you heard that. So I think that gives you the continuity that you need as a fan, right? If you had two separate analyst desks, two separate locations, bouncing back and forth, that would get a little bit more hectic, right? So I think, again, LA will be the home. Everything will kind of throw to and from LA probably. They'll be our storyline people throughout the day. And then the two venues don't have to worry about an analyst desk and all the things that have to be prepped for that content. So I think that's a really neat idea. You know, we've talked a lot about remote production in general, how it relates to esports and how traditional sports is heading that way. So them remoting their desk makes perfect sense, right? Financially as well as kind of storylines. So we'll see how it turns out. It is weird. They've got 5 teams at each spot. It's not an even number. Two teams only play once, I think, and the other teams play each other twice. So it's kind of weird. But it is what it is. And then the last piece of Overwatch news that we definitely want to talk about before the break, I don't have my camera. Oh, there we are. And then my timer's on. Is they have new jerseys, right? They have new jerseys. Now, some people like them. Some people like me are like, whoa, what is this? What did you do? So their new official home and away jerseys been designed by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Staple. He is a New York City fashion designer, streetwear god, so to speak. So they enlisted him to kind of figure out their new jersey. Not only what it looks like, but material and breathability and all those kind of things. A lot of the players were, I guess, asked about that kind of stuff, comfort, breathability. But I looked at this and I'm like, what? This is boring. This is worse, right? And I don't know, I don't know, that doesn't look very streetwear-y and cool and hip and new to me. And obviously everyone wants to do streetwear shit because 100 Thieves is kicking everyone's ass in the merch market, right? Because they make some cool streetwear stuff. So I'm gonna make the Phoenix shirt right now in front of you just to show you how hard it is. Just give me a second here. Starting with good old-fashioned duct tape. Just bear with me. Do 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 do. This is Sir Scoot Streetwear. Okay, hang on, let me get my pen. Get this out of the way. Phoenix is PHX, Jason, is that how you? PHX. The Phoenix Fibers is what we're calling this team. And that's PHIBERS because we're cool and edgy. Maybe even the I turns into a 1. So just like that, boom, your Phoenix official branded uniform for the 2022 Overwatch season.
Inspired.
Yeah, inspired by the official
the
kits
street
of the Overwatch and the street. I told you it was a prop-heavy show. All right. So that's all the props. We got all the jokes out of the way. And then, so teach their own. Like when we were even talking about it, Ian, who's our director, was like, I kind of like it. But this is the old versions, right? Let's walk through these. I think those are cooler looking. Those give you more character for the team. Like that I keep saying optic. The Outlaw one with the guns and like that's a really cool, like to me, these are hipper and cooler, right? It just seems like they're all uniform, they're all a little blander, and there's just nothing special about any of them. They're all very generic. Now, again, Scott, if you look at pro sports and you look at the basketball jerseys or the baseball jerseys, the football jerseys, they're all very similar, and they just change the colors. So, in that sense, bravo, great. I just don't think they're as cool. I think they'll sell less of them. Now, where they'll sell, maybe they'll make up for that is that these are Jeff Staple designed, manufactured, and all that stuff, and he is a well-known name in the fashion industry in that sense. But then in reading kind of the subreddit for competitive Overwatch, because I keep an eye on a bunch of subreddits to see what the fans are talking about of these games, A lot of them, again, very excited for the design. They think it's cool. And he's got beanies, he's got compression sleeves, they've got sweats. It's a whole kit, not just a jersey. But one of the things that popped in my mind that a lot of people were concerned about was not the jersey. Like, those fans were cool with it. It's $90, I think, which is kind of expensive. Not compared to NFL jerseys. Okay, yeah, we're just like the NFL. But they had a terrible, and they still do, Fanatics, who is a major manufacturer of clothing for professional sports as well, for fan stuff. Fanatics got the deal last year, but supposedly the quality was terrible. You washed them one time and shit started falling off and your name peeled. And really, really bad quality control, right? So what everyone was freaking about on the Overwatch world was like, is Fanatics selling these or are they also manufacturing them? Because if they're just the store that does the fulfillment and the shipping, okay, if Jeff Staple is in charge of quality control, that's one thing. But if he just did the design and Fanatics is going to print them the same shitty way they printed everything else, that's going to be bad, right? It's going to be bad for him because his name's on it, and certainly all the fans are going to be like, more crap, great. So I don't know. I did see a tweet where their logo was on the tag, the sale tag, but that doesn't mean they actually printed it themselves. So I don't know if they're fulfillment or manufacturing. Hopefully just fulfillment, because I wouldn't buy one anyway, but I hope if you're going to spend $90, you get one that can do some washing, right? So again, keep an eye on Call of Duty this weekend, and that's London, and then Overwatch in 2 places, New York City and Dallas-Fort Worth. But it'll be very interesting to see how these homestands are. I think they will be attended very well because, again, it is new in these cities. And I also think that the numbers will be pretty good, even though they're on YouTube. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Yep. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, though, lots of Counter-Strike news. Remember, get your questions in, DN Peak in chat, and we'll track your questions. And then again, at the end of the show, we got Thorin's top 5 North American Counter-Strike Global Offensives player of all time. Welcome back, folks. Second half of the breakdown, episode 4. Before we get into Counter-Strike and some other news, I want to give a shout out to the GG group. They just dropped a 20 bomb of gift subs in chat. Thank you very much for that. Thank you all the folks coming from the Twitch homepage. Hopefully we entertain you enough that you follow us, so you stick around, come back every Wednesday. Keep an eye on Do Not Peek for other content coming your way as well, YouTubes, etc. We also put the show on a couple of the podcast platforms, so if you want audio only, it's available on Spotify as well as iTunes. So yeah, let's get into, before we get into Counter-Strike though, I want to talk about this right here. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, whatever you want to call it. Apex Legends turned 1 year old. This game came out of nowhere on all of us, very secretive. No one knew it was coming, no one knew they were doing it, and they dropped this game with a whole lot of marketing presence. You know, they had a lot of paid streamers that were doing it that week, really boosted the game up. Really, really fun take on the BR genre. Jason and I put in way too many hours playing this bad boy. We need to get back and play it some more. There's been a bunch of updates since we played it last. But of all the BRs I played, that's the one I probably put the most time into so far and liked the most. So they turned 1 year, and that's really cool. And again, I think it was really neat how they kept the entire game under wraps and then said, hey, look at this little game based in the Titanfall world. Pretty cool, huh? And then a couple other things they've announced. They had some trailers for Season 4, explaining kind of how the season's going to work and all that kind of good stuff. But they have a new hero, Revenant, or Legend as they call him in Apex. He's a legend. Revenant got dropped as a new hero. I guess maybe he might need to be nerfed a little bit. People are saying he's a little overpowered right now, a little too powerful. But when I got back, Jason asked me if I had seen the trailer for his announcement, and I was like, no, I haven't seen shit. I unplugged on vacation. You should all try to do that. When you go, like I tweeted a little bit, but I really unplugged, that's the best way to do it. But he said, you got to watch this, and I want you to watch it live on stream, during the show. And I'm like, all right, I'll do a Scoots Reacts. So that's what we're going to do right now. I haven't seen this.
Protests turned violent recently as Hammond Robotics continues to face backlash for its controversial work on the Simulacrum program. New message.
I like this. Did really good stuff with Overwatch when you do their hero kind of backstories and canon.
Look who it is. Papai!
A toast to minha família and securing the future of our legacy.
Meu amor, for our daughter. What's in there?
Stay calm.
There he is.
You two go. Take her and go. Get out of here! Mama, you must go!
Papa, please!
I love you. What the hell are you? Death.
Good answer. Good answer. assimilation. That was cool, Jason. You're right. That was actually really, really cool. I like when they do that kind of stuff. Overwatch does a really good job with the kind of those hero profiles, right? Kind of explaining backstory and canon. We haven't seen too much of that in Apex, so I think it's really neat. Good way to announce a new hero. I did see another clip. There's also a nice kind of trailer they did for Season 4. And then there's also a little trailer where there's a reporter that's interviewing a character by the name of Forge, who's supposed to be a legend, right? And then at the end of they're like in a studio setting, kind of like this, right? TVs and shit. And towards the end of his interview, Revenant shows up behind him and kills him, right? And then the screen goes black, like technical difficulties kind of thing for the interview. So I like when they kind of weave this kind of stuff together for us, because these games are multiplayer only, right? It's not like you're going to slay dragons. So any of that kind of backstory you can give us, because normally in a game like World of Warcraft or whatever, you're getting those while you're playing the game. So really, really neat stuff. So that's cool. Jason, we probably need to play Apex again. No doubt about that. And then let's talk about some of their esports stuff, because again, we've also been wondering, okay, we know how everyone else is doing esports. What's Apex doing? A lot of people have been waiting. What are they going to do? And so now we know they've kind of announced their system, and it's actually a really cool system. It goes from grassroots all the way up to, they have 4 majors a year, the big boy events, but you can qualify in starting with online to smaller LAN events to regional stuff all the way to the major system. They're going to have 4 majors. 3 majors will pay out about a $500,000 prize purse each, and their final major of the year, $1 million. And so they're looking to give out a little over $3 million this year on their esports program. So again, now we kind of know what Apex is going to do. Again, all these games have to deal with, how do you deal with RNG and the disadvantages of drops and all those different things like everybody else has to figure out. But now we at least know what Apex's plan is, structure-wise, business-wise, event-wise. So if you're a player, whether you're a pro now or you're looking for that path to pro, now you've got some insight as to how you can go about doing it. So I think that's really cool. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that, and I definitely need to start playing it. I really, really enjoyed that game. We've just got to find someone to carry us, because Jason and I are not so good.
We are very bad.
Yeah, very bad. Very bad. So that's it for the Apex news. I got tons of Counter-Strike news. So let's get into that. First off, right away, breaking news, folks. Cue the breaking news sound effect. B-Site, now officially known as Flashpoint. We have a name. We can stop calling it B-Site. The new league, the metamorphosis of ECS into a slightly different team-owned league, with Faceit being the production company now instead of kind of being their project. Officially announced today, it's called Flashpoint. They're going to give out over $2 million in 2020. We've already heard quite a bit about it as B-Site. Dan Fiden has given some interviews. Thorin, while not their spokesperson, has announced that he's creative director of the league when it comes to production, format, all those kind of things. Monty is involved in the league. And going to be very player-centric, very content-centric. Thorin running the show. It's going to be, I would say, grittier. Let's use that word street again. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a spicy production, which is good. We need variety. So now we know a little bit more information. I've got the Half-Life TV news posted up right here. So let me just quickly scroll through. It does mention the teams, and I don't know if these are official or just the ones that we've all talked about that we think are involved. Cloud9, MIBR, Mad Lions, Dignitas, Gen G, and Contact, which is the old crazy roster, are continually mentioned as kind of the core starting teams to this. They'll have more member teams, and then they'll have a whole qualification system that you don't have to be a member team, but you can still play in the league. I don't know if it's called Flashpoint League or just Flashpoint. But at least it's not B-Site anymore. So that's cool. They're starting to give us real information. It does start in March, so they need to start talking to us about the reality of it. Again, as I've talked about almost every show, I like competition. And my favorite game is Counter-Strike. So to have tournament organizers and league organizers trying different experiments, EPL is a tournament organizer and teams, and this is teams with some assistants. Very different, right? But I think that's good. I think we're going to see production value continue to rise, and this kind of battle of league supremacy will make both products better, probably, right? Leagues are only a chunk of our season, right? We still have the big events. We still have the Blast freestanding events as well. But these are kind of longer form kind of chunks of time that teams commit to. And I'm really, really excited. I'm a Thorin fan. I think everyone knows that, right? I spent a lot of time on the road with Thorin when I was doing Counter-Strike hosting. He's certainly an acquired taste for some people, but I think him and Monty having creative control, and I'm going to hope that they have control and the decisions that we see are theirs. I'm really excited to see what they bring to us, whether it's shoulder content, whether it's in-game analysis tools being used differently. I'm just really excited to see how they do it. They've announced the talent. The talent is tier 1 for the people that's going to be talking about the game. So really excited. Again, I'm glad we're starting to get kind of more real information from them. I guess they had a press conference in London. And maybe there's a video right here, but I can't watch it because I'm live. But good to see, right? So let's continue on the Counter-Strike topic. And while I was gone, ESL announced the 24 invited teams for this season of EPL. And it created a whole bunch of stink because it was, are these invited? Did these people accept the invite? Are you just throwing this team list out to like swag your big old dick so B-Site doesn't get these teams? It's a political tweet, a political PR. Like, if they're not invited, why they haven't accepted, why are you doing this? A whole lot of things swirled around, right? So the biggest issue that came out of this is when the world found out that EPL was officially going from 48 teams to 24 teams. The rumor is no longer, here it is. And then if you were a team that isn't one of these logoed, you just realize that you lost your spot, right? A fucking horrible way for ESL to announce this, right? You had teams that had been asking for months and months and months, like, we hear you're changing shit. What are you changing? Because the original Lanxess agreement that got leaked, right, from the July agreement also listed 24 teams. So a lot of people knew that a change was coming, but you didn't know if your team was affected, and ESL wouldn't tell you, right? Like, Fraud and his team, they were like, are we in? Are we out? Would someone just fucking talk to us, please? Months of this, like, brick wall of no information, right? So then this drops, and ESL's all like, this is great. Here's our teams. And you're a pro league team. You qualified. You're not on this list. You're like, what the fuck just happened to us? We got recruited, and we're getting paid by this organization because they think we have a pro league spot. Now we're fucked, right? So just horrible way to communicate the changes to the public and most certainly to the teams affected by this, right? Now, since the announcement, a couple things have happened. Right on the heels of this announcement, the PA has and we've talked about this, the Counter-Strike Professional Players Association has an agreement with EPL and EPT, the Pro Tour and the Pro League, covering all sorts of stuff, rev share, quality of life, standardizing contracts, all sorts of really, really cool shit. I spent a whole half an hour talking about the document, right? Not everything was negotiable with ESL, right? Not everything is negotiable with Flashpoint or Blast, right? One of the things that was not negotiable with EPL was the cutting from 48 teams to 24. It was not debatable. It was happening, right? So we kind of knew, had to sit on NDAs, I couldn't tell Danny, I couldn't tell the people that were affected because we didn't know what teams either were being invited or were being cut. So, and not really a player association's place to say, oh, by the way, half of you guys are about to get fucked. Behind the scenes, these players did all they could to say, do you have to do it this way? If you're going to do it this way, you need to be proactive, tell these teams. But ESL kept saying, well, we don't know who's in and who's out, so we don't know who to tell you're out, you're in. So But again, there had to have been a better fucking way to let these guys on the bubble know that you were going to yank the rug out from under them, right? So the PA felt like, because we got attacked. The board members got attacked. You only care about tier 1. You don't give a fuck about us. It's so not fucking true. Like, if one more 17-year-old fucking kid tells me what we care about, what we don't care about, I'm going to fucking blow a gasket, right? These players do care. These conversations did happen. Like, what about these teams? What about this? What does relegation look like? Like, the players want relegation in all the leagues, right? Even though no relegation would protect their status, they want to be relegated because they want these leagues to be the strongest they can be for competitive integrity. But there is no relegation for member teams of Flashpoint. There's a system that you can get fined, and then maybe kicked out. And then same thing with EPL. There are some mechanisms they're putting in place that maybe if you're a member team, eventually we can kick you out if you're just piss poor for X amount of seasons, right? So I just get really defensive when the fan base all of a sudden thinks they know what the board members care about, right? And like these guys, their place is already set. They know that. They're fighting for the next set of pros. They're also trying to stabilize tier 1 so that the kids in MDL have somewhere to go. If tier 1 goes away, it doesn't matter if you're in the fucking Mountain Dew League anymore, does it, right? So they've got 2 jobs. Secure the best possible world for the top pros, but figure out the best way to keep that system flowing, right? Point being, they can't dictate all terms to all TOs. Certainly not in the first ever season of having terms and having agreements, right? That leverage will grow, and maybe eventually we see a PA that goes, we're not playing if this doesn't get changed. But we don't live in that world right now, folks. That's what you all need to understand. They fight what they can fight, and they accept what they can't fucking change, right? But it's really disingenuous to shit on these pros thinking they don't care about anyone but their slot in one of these leagues. The PA is almost 200 members. It is tier 1 all the way down to tier 3. We give legal advice to the kids signing their first contract and shit. So, like, it's okay if you're an uninformed fan, but don't act like you're informed, right? Your opinions are fucking in your ass, right? So I just wanted to touch base on that. The PA did put out a statement saying, hey, man, this is what we're here to do. Here's the limits of what we can do, So it's kind of a non-statement if you're aware of the PA already. It was kind of addressing what those of us kind of that are aware of what a PA does. It kind of addressed very basic bullet points. But it was also like, hey, we too are disappointed with ESL. Not our call, not the way we would do it, but not anything we can do about it right now. So out of this, and again, terrible communication by ESL. They have admitted that. They're always very reactive and not very proactive, right? And they need to get better at being proactive with this shit. What they started to do now is Carmack has gone on a couple Counter-Strike talk shows. He went on Half-Life TV Confirmed. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this show, you want to watch. If you're a Counter-Strike fan, you need to watch this show every week. Really, really solid show. It gets into a lot more Counter-Strike minutia than I will get into. Scores and who did well and who did bad. Kind of the roster moves, those kind of things. So, and then Carmack and Flying DJ, he's the guy on the far right, Ulrich, both went on By the Numbers, Return of By the Numbers, legally, to kind of answer Richard's questions. Both good interviews. A little bit of more nuanced information came out of both those. I watched both segments. I think Richards dives into a little bit more because he had more time and he had 2 guys to talk to. Carmack was a segment of the Half-Life TV Confirmed show. So, I think it was like 15 minutes or so. But they both kind of address, and both sides kind of gave them the business, like, why did you do it this way? And the fact of the matter is, they found that 48 teams was not a financial feasible thing, and they grew Pro League to too big of a size in that sense, regionally, et cetera. Not all the teams in their mind deserve to be in a Pro League. So on the business side, it does make sense to trim it, tighten it up, because again, we're in a world where no one's making a lot of money, so it does make sense if you need to not grow that product, you need to shrink it. But I think the way they did it was just terrible, right? And less about the fans and more about the people affected by the change, like they found out via press release. That's fucked up, right? So Yeah, so that's that piece of Counter-Strike news. Out of that, though, they have said, okay, we're going into season 11, right, of Pro League. So what they've said, though, and they've put out a press release on this as well, and they talked about it on these two shows, is they're not going to fix anything like these 24 teams when they accept their invites, that's how Pro League's going to run this season. But what they've done is they've figured out for next season, they're going to do some qualifiers for every team that technically was a Pro League team now, the bigs, etc. They're going to have a tournament to get some of the spots back in, and you can qualify in that way. So you can only get into those qualifications if you were one of these teams that got screwed. And then they've kind of explained how other teams will feed into Pro League every year. So season 12 gets a little better to kind of play catch up for some of these teams, but it doesn't help me now. That's not till September, right? I've got an org that signed me thinking I got a Pro League spot and I don't have one. Now, Big's okay. Big will survive. But again, you've got these other teams that was their one thing. We're in Pro League, right? Now they're not even fucking Pro League. So, and then season 13, I guess we'll get more of our normal way of how MDL feeds into Pro League. Now, what they've also said in these interviews is that they're looking to strengthen MDL as that second tier of league, make it stronger, more popular, better advertised, better streamed, make it a better standalone product. So if you're playing an MDL, it's better than if you were playing an MDL last year, right? And then you've still got this path to pro or pro to tier 1 pro, whatever you want to call it. But again, just bad form on how they did it, how they announced it, keeping people in the dark, never a good idea, and they're reaping the negative, press and fan ire because of it, which just leads right into everyone loving Blast again, everyone loving Flashpoint now as these new guys that are coming in. So yeah, ESL's got their PR work cut out for them for a little while, I think. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. Yeah, and speaking of Blast, though, I definitely want to give Blast a good chunk of my time on the show today. We're already over an hour, so it is what it is, though. Welcome to the breakdown, where we're loosely scripted. So Premiere is the new kind of Blast series, right? And they're doing it very similar to the E-League system, where 4 teams go to a location, they play their group play. You got a winner, you got a second place, you got third and fourth, and they rinse and repeat that, right? And again, very, very much like an E-League product. They're doing it in a soundstage environment with a small crowd, which allows you as a production company to really nail your shit down, right? You're not loading in and out of big old cavernous venues every time. This is in London. They're going to sit here for a couple weeks, right? So they kind of move the show in chunks, right? Looks like E-League. It's actually a little bigger, a little more spread out. But again, it's a soundstage. It's a studio show with a small studio audience. And, Jason worked E-League. He can very easily tell you how much better that is for a quality of production if you're kind of going to the same place every day, right? So they did a lot of really, really cool things. So first off, they changed the format, right? Everything we all bitched about, they changed, right? And I had some very knockdowny yell, I would say a yell, but I went to their Miami event last year to see Jason. He was producing that show and kind of talk to Blast and see how they were treating players, PA kind of advisor. And they were so, these guys I was talking to were so vehement that best of ones were better. 3 streams at once were better. The way we're doing it in the arena where we're showing everything at once with our big fancy triangle stage, this is the way to go. And I was like, it's not. You're fucking wrong. You're fucking wrong, right? Best of ones suck. This multiple all at once makes 3 mediocre productions instead of 1 good production, right? And I don't know, maybe those guys that I got in those conversations with are no longer there, but whatever Kool-Aid they drank, they listened to everybody, right? We now have a more traditional best-of-3 format. Makes for better Counter-Strike. Again, they're now in a more of a soundstage, so less audience to worry about. You're not fighting the production crew in the building and how they use cameras versus how you use cameras, because they're all the same production, right? Much better stuff.
So I'd like to say, fuck you, Blast, for doing this after I stopped producing your shows. Do you know how hard it is to produce 4 to 5 streams at one fucking time? There's me here, Daniel is back here, Ian is here. We all work that show. It is an absolute nightmare. So, I mean, congratulations that you changed, but fuck you for doing it after I quit working for you guys.
Yeah, that's always how it works, man. The light bulb goes off after the people that told them got frustrated and left, right? Thankfully, you all left because you're all in the control room on my show now. So awesome stuff. But yeah, so they listened, right? And again, to Jason's point, they were doing multiple streams, right? Now they can focus all their energy on one produced stream. So shoulder content was better. The desk flowed better because, again, they're talking about one match at a time. They had Thorin on the desk now, Semler hosting, Sponge. You know, they had great talent last year, but this year they decided, we talked about it on the earlier show, they decided to go right after the big boys, right? So great talent, great content. I was watching when I got home, and I was just trying to find shit to nitpick, right? Because show can't all just be me being nice to people, right? So I was like, okay, wait a minute. All this stuff better. I think you saw in the clip, they solved the problem of a Team A being able to see if Team B got flashed. They're now using this frosted electric glass system. If you're not familiar, there's electronic current that goes through the glass. You flip a switch, it goes opaque. You turn it off, it goes clear. And so, and the problem in Counter-Strike, if you're not familiar, is when you set up a stage where the teams can literally see themselves, whether it's 2 booths across from each other, or in this sense, just across from each other, versus a standard stage where they're both kind of tucked out of each other and you have to look way over to see somebody. The problem in Counter-Strike, if I throw a flash and I can see the other team, I can see if you light up. And I can quickly, oh shit, those 2 guys lit up, they're in B. There's 2 guys in B, right? And so you can, it's kind of intel, right? And different TOs do different things. ESL brings a big wall up in between, but no one's ever done this frosted situation. So when the round's over, the glass gets turned off. They can trash talk, and they were trash talking. It was actually really cool. When teams can see each other, they start bantering, right? Standing up, going, hey, what about that shot, you piece of shit? That's good stuff, right? That's good content. But when they sit down and the round's about to start, they frost the glass so that competitive integrity stays good, right? So a really interesting way to solve that dilemma. Again, very innovative, very, very cool stuff. I was really trying to find things to nitpick, right? And so the first one that pops out is their HUD is still like this garishly blue and pink circus font look because it matched. They've decided to go with their corporate colors for their overhead, right? And in Counter-Strike, we have the ability to custom our interface, our overlay, right? They make theirs blue and pink, right? Because their colors are blue and pink. I'm okay with the blue, but for me, the pink blurs and it glows and it's over pink, so it just doesn't, like, look at the kill feed. It just doesn't translate well, right? It's a blob of pink. And I go, part of me would like the purist. Like, I like when we show what the kids at home see too. So I like blue and orange, right? Our default terrorist and counter-terrorist colors. So I like them messing with HUDs, and you can talk about where they put, you know, how many frags and all the different information on the interface. But this pink just has to go, right? And we said it last year, like, your HUD is too garish, it's too loud, it's too distracting, right? I think the blue's fine. I think if they just toned that pink down, it's just hot pink, and it's just, again, watching on a phone or, you know, anywhere else, like, it literally just, it makes it harder to read, right? Purples and pinks, right? Like, even looking at the Twitch logo, right? That purple kind of, there's a term for what it's doing right now, but see how it kind of color shifts? Because your eye gets fucked up, right? The pink does that. So that was my only thing, was I don't like the pink. And then I like that they're doing some cool shoulder content. They always did cool shoulder content, but like the dart thing, they did a dart thing where they had a dart challenge, right? Really slow. Those kind of things need to be fast edited, quick edited. We don't need 20 minutes of them standing around like jib-jab. Like, that needs to be faster and quicker, right? Just as an edited piece, right? It's just very draggy. It was neat getting the players to throw darts, and you got points for hitting the chicken and stuff, but just that kind of stuff needs to be fast edit, like cut out the bullshit and get to that information, right? So, but again, generally, like I got to give them big thumbs up. You know, they listened, although we all bitched about the HUD and they didn't change that, but they drastically changed their product this year, right? They're still in London. They start up again this weekend as well. 4 more teams rolling in: Astralis, Navi, Complexity, Vitality for this week. That's going to be spicy, no doubt about it. Navi right now is in London. They're playing in the Ice Challenge. They've made it to the finals with Mouse Sports. I think that plays tomorrow. Yeah, I think so. I think the only team that might get some jet lag is Complexity, but I don't know when they're heading over to London. But again, bravo, Blast. You know, I yelled at you. A lot of people yelled at you. Your own employees yelled at you. You know, big thumbs up for drastic changes to all things Blast. Really looking forward to see how you continue. Because again, for the first weekend, they nailed it really, really good, right? So now they can just improve on that product, right? Better shoulder content, more shoulder content, all that kind of good stuff. I'm being told in chat that Complexity is actually, that's right, the minor qualifier is happening. They're in Europe for that. So we shouldn't have any jet lag out of this one. You know, Liquid did say they were a little jet lagged in some of their matches week 1. You know, they got thumped by FaZe twice. They didn't boot camp before. They said, you know, no excuses. You don't boot camp before one of these, you know, because part of a boot camp is you ideally boot camp maybe in the country or in the geographic region of your next event. So while you're boot camping, you're resetting your time clock so you're not jet lagged, right? They didn't do any of that. And it maybe cost them, you know, I mean, but also you got to give props to FaZe. FaZe looked really good. FaZe looked really, really good. So it's kind of neat to see FaZe doing really good because they've been this team that is supposed to have been doing really well for quite a while. So it's nice to see Yanko do well, and that crew thumped their way through their part of the Blast series. So that's Blast for us. That's good. Again, this is this weekend. All this stuff is happening this weekend. Again, a website I talk about all the time, juked.gg. If you've never been there, go check it out. It is your TV guide for all things esports. You can find all these events are listed there. You can set reminders for matches, so you get reminded that a match is live. And again, there's lots of sites for these different games that obviously cover in-depth stuff that I don't necessarily talk about. So obviously HLTV is a great one for us, Wikipedia, all that kind of good stuff. Now, my last topic of Counter-Strike also just happened. Map adjustments. Valve adjusted some maps on us, right? As I tweeted and as I talked about during the Overwatch stuff, I always wonder when it's about developers and they're changing the game, what are they trying? What is the problem they're trying to solve with a new hero, with a tweak to a hero or a map or whatever, a gun, and is this gonna fix that problem, right? So we've got a few changes to Mirage, Train, and Dust 2. So starting with Mirage, they added a bench to middle on the T side. So you can self-boost into window, right? You used to kind of have to boost. Now you can do it all by yourself. These changes aren't necessarily live in League play yet. They also, as you can see, their balcony here had a little lip before. That lip has now been lowered, so you can kind of run straight out. You don't have to jump and get off. Don't know how these are going to play out for both that B site and middle. Obviously, it's going to make it a little harder on the CT side of middle because the pressure is going to be easier on you because you don't need a couple guys to get there to boost you up, distract, all those kind of things. You know, if you can get one guy to that bench, he's going to get in that window on you. So again, me pontificating on how the outcome will be is actually asinine because I want to see pros playing it and what they do with it, right? But definitely more pressure, obviously, on that window now. And then I don't know how it's going to play out on the B site changes to that railing. If that makes it easier for teams to pour out, if they're coming, from the hallway, does it make it much easier to get up there if you're a CT now? But we'll see how that plays out. Train, the next couple changes have to do with skyboxes. So Train, they opened up the skyboxes over by Ivy, which again is going to make well, I guess maybe not so much retakes from Ivy, but initial entries. This is just Anthony throwing his first smoke over to make a video. So look at that, what that smoke covers off fucking Z right there. So it'll be very interesting again when the pros get a hold of this and the coaches and the tactician types. I want to see Anders get in there with some theory crafting to see, different utility now that whole skybox is open. Again, what would happen before, if you threw that same smoke, it was going to bounce into an individual skybox and it would end up back in T-spawn somewhere, right? It wouldn't go all the way through. So that'll be very, very interesting to see kind of what that opens up. And then the last map, Dust 2, also, this is the big one. Of people talking about the changes, this is the one that people are more like, oh, fuck, oh, shit, oh, God. Opened up the skybox right there, used to be closed, right? You couldn't throw anything from tunnels up and over. You'd have to throw them into the tunnel, right? So now, CT side starting out, going to be a harder site to hold because flashes and smokes and shit are going to come at you that, it used to be kind of, you had to kind of peek a little bit to throw that shit. Now, that'll be sight unseen shit coming your way, right? So it's going to make it harder for the CTs to initially hold that site and then roll reverse once it is taken. If a bomb is planted, now the CTs have that advantage of another way, a set of smokes, set of flashes, etc. Molly things off. It'll be very interesting to see how B is going to be a nightmare, right? For both sides, initially and then on a retake once a bomb's planted. Again, we had some tweets from people talking about it, and it seems like a lot of people were like, again, it's really about this B tunnels opening up. And then we started pontificating us gold novas. Does that mean that
Whoa, I'm not a gold nova.
Yeah, he's not a gold nova. Will B players be aggressive? Will part of the strategy be to take tunnels and hold that spot? So the T's can't even set up to try to do something on you, because you can now use those skyboxes to flash in, right, to that. So one guy's flashing you into tunnels. You're now a CT taking tunnels, locking off that whole side. I don't know. I haven't strategized about Counter-Strike since CPL days. But it's just very interesting to see how that'll work out. And a lot of people were saying, these are all great, but we really want you to flip the doors, right? We need to flip the doors. No door flip yet. So it'll be very, Sempus is great. It's great, just get rid of the map, right? Obviously, Sempus isn't like Mirage. So again, very excited to see these in action. I know there is conversations right now between some of the TOs and the PA about when do we start using them? When can we start using them? Because teams don't want to be practicing two sets of maps, right? So the longer you stay on the old maps, you're still going to have to start learning the new maps anyway, but you don't want to have to worry about the old shit. So that's all being discussed right now, when these TOs flip the switch and everything goes to the new maps. Very, very cool shit. Again, I'm all for tweaking our maps. My question is, what are you tweaking and why? Was there a problem without the bench in Mirage? Was there a problem at B-Site? And I know obviously B-Site is very stifling right now on Dust 2, so it does make sense they open that up to see what kind of utility play we can get out of it. And then the train one, I think is going to be cool. I think that's going to be fine, that Ivy player can now throw some shit that helps the other part of the push in while he does his thing. Again, it would just be really interesting to see what kind of smokes and flashes and everything we get out of the map changes. Again, didn't seem like anything jumped out that anyone was losing their minds over on Reddit or on Twitch, chats, Twitter, etc. Other than Sempus, right? So we'll see how that turns out. Now, we come to that time-honored part of the show that I answer questions. So hopefully, Jason has some questions for me back there from you guys in chat. I will do my best to answer them the best I can. Ready when you are.
I got some questions for you, sir.
All right.
First one is by a guy whose name I cannot read. His question's a little wrong, but I'm going to read it as asked. Do not peek. Any thoughts on the second major being rumored being hosted by Blast, reported by DK, which is not really what he said and DK said. But.
Yeah, it's not a rumor. That was DK writing an opinion piece saying, hey, maybe these guys are worthy of one. So there's no rumor yet that Blast is going to get one or Blast even applied for one. I love DK. I think he does great work. I think that's a little early after one weekend in a studio environment. They finally did a Tier 1 Counter-Strike event. Like, they ticked all the boxes. Does that make them magically major worthy? I don't know. Majors encompass big arenas, 10,000 people, big stage show, things that they didn't necessarily do that well because their format was so different before. They haven't practiced that. They haven't thrown an ESL Cologne size event, right? In a normal format that we're used to. So I think they're earning themselves towards it, right? I think as they do more and more of these events. But again, a confined environment of a studio is quite different than having to load into a big ass arena in a foreign country and then still checking all the boxes, right? ESL doesn't do it perfect, and they've been doing it for years, right? So maybe too early to give them the major card, but I think they're in the conversation now, whereas last year they would never have been in the conversation because their format was so dramatically different than anything that a major should be like, right? So let's see how they keep going. They'll do London for a couple weeks. Then I think they go to Moscow for a couple weeks. So let's see how they do, right? And also, Blast has to apply to want to do a major, right? Majors cost a lot of money. Majors don't make a lot of money. So you might have a world where Blast says, we don't even want to do one of these fucking things, right? We'd rather do our events and nail them, right? So we'll see. Yeah, so that's my answer to that.
Excellent. All right. So next one, you frequently say you watch lots of things for production value. Anything new production related you wish more people were using this year?
Let's go. I think one thing I used to always want was a sky camera. And what a sky camera is, it's one of those cameras on wires you see at the NFL football games and stuff, where they put big towers or they attach to the ceilings of these big venues. And the sky camera is basically a roving jib camera that can literally go almost anywhere unobstructed. We're starting to see more of those at events, and I think they're the sexiest shots ever, right? When you can do these really long, farther than you can with a crane jib shots, right? Super sexy all the way from the back of the venue. Like Super Bowl. I don't give a shit about either team, but I watched Super Bowl this year for production value. They had 3 sky cameras going. And they also had a camera that was on a rail that went up the side of the stadium. Then they took the other shot of another camera going down into the stadium, then to the sky camera shot, right? That could go anywhere. I think that kind of shit, as we kind of start adopting more of what traditional, sports broadcasting does, just adds that other level of sexiness, right? Another problem with a floor jib, it's a big extendy crane thing, right? So it takes a bunch of your square footage on the floor for the operator, for the unit. You have to tape off so people don't touch it, they can't get near it. So that takes away seats that people could be sitting in, and it often gets in the way of a lot of people's viewing experience, right? Because it's got a big black arm and then the camera, and it's flying all over the place. These sky cameras tend to stay higher in the air. So again, you're not messing with any of the fans' views. So those kind of things. I liked, back to Blast, we often, almost traditionally now, will have a POV camera on top of the monitor, right? For every player shot, that POV player shot. But generally, they use smaller lipstick Marshall cameras. A lipstick camera is called that because it looks like a tube of lipstick. It's really small and narrow. And it ends up being maybe sometimes fisheye. But what Blast did is they used a bigger camera, size-wise, viewing angle-wise, and they put them to the side, right? So their player reaction shots are bigger, better, fuller. They're not so confined. If a player leans forward or leans back, he's not out of the shot. And again, like in sports, it's all the same set of cameras, right? Someone just scored a touchdown. Those cameras are showing the touchdown and all the excitement and everything. We're in game for a good chunk of that excitement. And so the better camera you have on those players when the time comes to show them, either celebrating or being pissed, like that's how we attach to that storyline, right? Of the Stewie being happy or Stewie being pissed. And so they picked a better camera to be their POV cameras. I think that's a small thing, but it ends up in the show just a much better shot. It's a better quality, you know, and a lot of people were like, oh, it's just a POV camera, but that's the kind of shit I look at, like the quality of the POV cameras, right? So other than that, like I don't see anything dramatically coming to our world that we don't already do. We're already doing AR graphics, you know, and augmented reality stuff. I mean, just look at some of the stuff that League of Legends does for their worlds, right? Like they are setting bars that traditional sports tries to then emulate. This last year, the Baltimore Ravens flew a big-ass Raven, AR Raven, in their stadium. Guess who did that first? League of Legends with a dragon, right? They won a fucking Emmy, a sports Emmy for that, right? So in some regards, traditional sports is looking at what we're doing and then grabbing that idea and going, oh shit, we should do that, right? And that's kind of cool because I think that we kind of lead the charge in that world, and traditional broadcasting looks at what we're doing. I think that's kind of neat shit. It sounds like I have no more questions, so thank you. Wait, what? Yeah, I know. Now, why are you interrupting? See, this is when they're in your ear, just talking stupid shit. Yeah, so no more questions. So the next thing we're going to talk about a little bit is, again, we've got this collaboration going with Thorin, and thankfully he likes working with us. He's done a couple top fives for us already, and so we're going to do the world premiere of Thorin's top 5 North American CSGO players of all time. Back next Wednesday, VOD on YouTube tomorrow, on all the audio channels tomorrow. You know, if you want a podcast, listen to it on your way to work. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming from the Twitch homepage. Hopefully we sucked you in and you became a follower or a subscriber this week. But we'll be back next Wednesday. Enjoy Thorin's Top 5.
I'm Thorin, also known as the Esports Historian, and here are my top 5 North American CSGO players of all time, exclusively for Do Not Peek Entertainment. Now, a few words to say on the criteria by which I chose and composed this list. Unlike my top 5 players of 2019, a little bit of a tweak, since we're talking about people's entire careers here, is that it's not solely about performance. We are also, yes, performance is still king. It's still the primary driving factor, but it's attenuated by how high was your career peak? What was the longevity of your career like? What was your overall team success like? What impact did you have on that team? So just as I personally think players like Aaron Rodgers and Charles Barkley are better players than Tom Brady and Magic Johnson, corresponding players within their particular sports, it's difficult to arrive at any kind of argument that reasonably states that the former group had better careers and thus were greater players than the latter. So taking all of that into account, starting out at number 5 is Naf, currently of Team Liquid, formerly of teams like Optic Gaming and Renegades. The nasty-ass fragger himself. He showed glimpses of his talent early on when he was in Denial/Team Liquid, coming into later on when he was in Optic, but he was famously unreliable. Actually, his stats aren't even particularly great from that era. I personally think when he was initially in the Optic that was good at the end of 2016, he was fairly overrated, largely because it was a pretty even squad in terms of, like, they were actually pretty good in terms of man for man, how much fragging there was in the team. Generally, they were good players, but they weren't the best players in the world. And I also think actually he wasn't the main fragger in the team. That was probably Mixwell. He wasn't the key player in the team. That was probably Roche. He wasn't the IGL Stanislaw who called all the tactics. It's just that he went off in that famous E-League Season 2 final against Astralis, especially on the third map, and essentially won them the championship on that map. So that's one of the reasons people remember him fondly then, and to some degree overhyped him. Now, When he moved to Renegades, and to some degree, yes, was playing the Tier 2 scene, he was an absolute monster. He really started to showcase what his raw skill ability was and to develop his game a little more and get more of that lurk style. When he came into Team Liquid, he was initially the best player for a few months. He was an elite player for much of 2018, a year which obviously Astralis was the best team ever in. Then he come into 2019. He was certainly a very good player across 2019, but he wasn't the primary star of the team pretty much ever. He heated up a little bit later on in the year. He was definitely good during the run when they were winning all the championships, but I would say Elige especially and Twists as well were the better players. Most interestingly though, and throughout his whole career, he has been very, very good against Astralis, bizarrely, of all the Team Liquid players. He just always, from his days in Optic, being able to do pretty well, match up well against that team, perhaps because he's probably the best lurk style player in the team. He somewhat fits their style. That somehow has an effect against them. He's an all-around player. He has very strong rifles. He could do that only if he wanted. You've seen when the Krieg and the AWP came in, he was a monster with those. But you put him onto the AWP, he's a hybrid player. He can certainly be a very good AWPer. He knows how to make it fit within his style, which is a little bit more lurk. He's a good clutch player. He is a good lurk player. And he's someone who doesn't seem to get phased offline. He's not always going to be the biggest player offline, but he doesn't seem, when he's in the big match, to get mentally taken out of it in the way that some of his teammates do. So number 5, Naf. Number 4 is Skadoodle, formerly of Cloud9, before that iBuyPower, and if you go back far enough, Curse NA. Originally, he was one of the clear talents within CSGO from the NA region, along with Swag. In iBuyPower, he had his emergence. You came to early 2014 when they were actually winning tournaments against European teams. He was the best player on the team most of the time. And then after the up and down 2014, in 2015, he really hit his stride, and he was the main strength of that Cloud9 2015 summer run where they made the 3 finals in a row, particularly, obviously, him partnering with Shroud, but he was the main player because his consistency at this time was exceptional. He had a very low amount of deaths. He would frag well consistently. He was one of the best AWPers in the world, even after the AWP nerf, most notably, and as a result, a very reliable star player to have in your team, and for a while looked like he might be the player who would raise NA to the level where they could win a major. Now, funnily enough, throughout the majority of his career, he was crap at the majors. But despite the fact this is years later, when he was far and away not anywhere close to the best NA player, forget even the best player, I mean, not even the best player in his own team, quite frankly, at times one of the worst, he did have, though, one of his best series at a major at the best possible time, which was in the final of E-League Boston, which obviously was the event that Cloud9 went on to win very, very narrowly. And so his massive performance with big plus minus was essential to that victory in the end. Unfortunately for Skadoodle, his career did fall apart in the last year and a half of his career. He probably should have retired in terms of if he wanted to maintain a legacy as one of the greats. In terms of the team he was on, they probably should have gotten rid of him. But you cannot deny 2014, especially 2015, and a little bit of 2016, he was one of the better players in the world. Certainly for me, the best NA player and one of the greats to come from the region. In at number 3 is Twists, currently of Team Liquid, formerly of teams like TSM, Misfits. Now, when he was in TSM, he was one of the initial players with the raw skill, the flair, that allowed them to have a little bit of a brief run that people remember. Then in Misfits, they were starting to go somewhere with him in the lineup. He was clearly the most skilled player in the team. Then, though, he hit Team Liquid 2017, and this is when you really saw him emerge as a top talent. He, along with Elige, who at the time was the best NA player, he was actually able to develop Team Liquid into a squad that again could go back to international finals, be a top 4 team, and with Elige as the best player, he was the guy where before it just been Elige solo carrying when Simple had been gone, now he's able to help Elige get some top placings and form a pretty deadly duo at the time, being swapped more into that entry role. 2018, he was a good player, but it was Naf and it was Elige, and it was only really in the autumn when he hit his stride. He had that incredible performance at ESL 1 New York, where even though the team finished runners-up, he was far and away the MVP, and certainly deserved in many ways to win that tournament. This was god-tier stuff, like one of the best individual performances over a whole tournament I've seen from any player ever in CSGO, never mind just NA players. In 2019, he was particularly strong in the summer run, very low deaths, high frags, in contention for MVP at 4, 5, 6 events in a row, you could say, when Team was winning every event. Obviously, they had an incredible run in terms of series. They lost something like 1 out of 32 that they played. In terms of his role, he's been around the place. He's been a lurk player, a selfish player early on. Then he's been an entry player in Team Liquid and had success there. Then he's been more of a lurk last year while they won most of their championships. He has outrageous aim, some of the absolute best aim of any player to ever play CSGO. You can put him up where the Ziwus and the Simples and these level of incredible players. He's also, interestingly enough, able to apply that aim to clutches, which is not always something in CS that actually goes hand in hand. A lot of the really skilled players aren't necessarily the best in the clutches, so I think that's a key element he brings to his team. I think he has the player who has the potential to take NA to new heights. He could win a major as one of the stars of an NA team that would go into the major as a favourite. And that is something that we've never seen happen before in the history of the North American region. So actually, interestingly, of the players on this list, he'd be one of the best bets to potentially end up top of the list when his career is done and it's all in the history books and we're picking through people's careers and evaluating them. In at number 2 is probably a surprise for some of you. It's Hiko. This guy was a monster fragger in 2013. He was legitimately among the best players in the world, far and away the best player from North America at this point in time, when actually North America had a lot of players who were failing at the majors or were underwhelming compared to their European counterparts. In 2014, he was a strong fragger again. As a result, his team remained relevant internationally. You go to 2015, 2016, now he's become a role player. He's mainly there to be clutch, to be good on LAN, to not get phased by his opponents, to give some confidence, to hopefully sharpening iron with some of the younger names, the Nitros, the Elysias that are in his team at this point in time. I think a classic performance that you can still pull out would obviously be at the MLG Columbus Major. We're on the second map in the semi-final against Luminosity Gaming, eventual champions. He was a monster across the first half, almost won the whole map for them at that point in time. They fell apart, obviously, but that was Team Liquid. They were classically chokers. The interesting thing about Eco is, not only was he at one point in time one of the best players, but the talismanic effect that he has had in his career as a player, both for the North American scene in terms of his feats and the teams he played for, cannot be understated. When he was in Complexity, he took them the top 4 at their first major as the best player in the team. Then, when they were Cloud9, he was part of the team that was making top 8 at each of the majors at a time when the iBuy Power guys who were more skilled were failing in the group stage. He was part, obviously, at ESL 1 Cologne 2014 of that team that went out in the quarterfinals to NIP, who were on that miracle-inspired run. And quite frankly, that Cloud9 team could have won that major. Then, he was, the next year, he stood in for Flipside, a Ukrainian team, where he was playing along with Simple, where they managed to finish top 4 at ESWC, beating NIP in a best-of-3 series. At that point in time, the biggest upset NIP had ever faced in best-of-3 play. Again, not even a squad that was speaking English at a particularly high level. This guy just comes along and success follows him. Then you go into his time in Team Liquid. They placed top 4 at both the majors in 2016, making the final of the second one, ESL 1 Cologne 2016. They're beating out elite-level European teams to do this. They're placing above the level any NA team had ever gone to. Even after that, he had the top 4 at ESL New York, a super stacked event, one of the first to use Swiss system as well in a real event, and they still finished top 4 there. This guy was the player in the North American scene in terms of if you wanted to win and have top placings for 4 straight years of his career. The only other players in all of the history of the North American region to even place top 4 at 3 majors are 2 of his teammates, and 2 of those, which is Elysian Nitro. Stewie 2K didn't do it, Skadoodle didn't do it, Tarek didn't do it, Omac didn't do it, Naf didn't do it. None of them have done it. To this day, they haven't been able to match this guy's accomplishments, and he was arguably playing on weaker teams than the Team Liquids of the last couple of years. He was also the reason why they were able to get Simple into Team Liquid and really transform the fortunes of that franchise, who at that point were perennially below Cloud9 for many good reasons. He was a player who had pretty good spray, some very solid aim, reliable aim. He had a very good work ethic, and especially he was good on LAN at a time where a lot of NA players were still better online or better in group stages. This guy was just good when it came to performing in the big matches. He had a winner's mentality. He would do anything to win. He would play with anyone to win at a time when politics actually was tearing apart and inhibiting. It was the bottleneck to some degree to the NA scene. So as I've often said before, in terms of the sentiment of his career and what he stood for, Hiko was right. Number 1 is, I would hope, no surprise to anyone who's been watching CSGO for the last few years, Elige from Team Liquid, basically the squad he's played in his entire career in terms of at the pro level. North America's chosen one, as I famously dubbed him, and he has absolutely lived up to. In 2016, when Simple was there, he was the sidekick to Simple. Then when Simple left, famously was supposedly, whether this is true or not, to have said privately, I'll be the carry instead of Simple. And he started to deliver. He became a very good player at the end of 2016. 2017, he was solo carrying them through the dark days where they wouldn't even make it to the major. Then he got twisted as a sidekick. He was right back in international finals. 2018, to some degree, he shifted his role a little bit in terms of what he did. People like Naf and Twists had their moments, but when all said and done, he established himself as the best player in his team and in his region again. 2019, it's no discussion. He was the best NA player. He's a top 5 player in the world in 2019. This guy overall, it might not always have been a line only ever going up, but the overall line, the graph goes up. And it's year-on-year development in different areas of his game. And I can now consider him the most complete player that North America has ever produced. When I was researching him for a long text article on his career, I actually found he was even more impressive when I watched his game than I'd realised, because beyond the flash and the highlights, the decisions he would make and how he would position himself and how he would force the game to go at his speed, his control over the game is phenomenal. His skills obviously are right up there. His first ball aim is bonkers. His spray is among the very best in the game. He is good in clutches. He is good on LAN. He is good in semi-finals and finals against some of the best teams. He is the foundation of what was a potential era, the Team Liquid dynasty of 2019 that won all those tournaments in a row and in a certain span of time. He will end his career, I think, as one of the top 10 players to ever play Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now, at the end of my list, I will add in one honourable mention, and that is going to be Swag, the player who obviously at the beginning of 2015 was indefinitely banned from CSGO, and that's because he was a real talent. At the level of Hiko, around the time of Skadoodle, he would have actually potentially hit his peak at the time when we had some of these guys like Naf Elige coming through and becoming some of the best, but obviously he was banned. Now listen, he played his role within that ban and certainly deserved punishment and probably a temporary ban, but I think it's a crime that he was actually banned indefinitely and that will never be revoked. They've already pissed away his career at this point in time, and if he had not have been banned, I do think he would have had a real shot at being on this list. I don't think he would have been number one. And I do think that it set NA back a while, that they had to wait for some of the 3 of the other names on this list to develop, to get older, before they could ever have a real shot at having a world number 1 team after a couple of the other names had helped establish the region. Right, that's my top 5 North American Counter-Strike Global Offensive players of all time for Do Not Peak Entertainment. See you in the next one.